Have a seat quick. It could be ready anytime.
Is this where I do my interview? I'm sorry I'm late. I was in the bathroom. I was putting paper towels in the sink so that it wouldn't drain, if you must know. Because that's what I like to do. Hey, my name's Landon Packard. Are you a judge? Cool. Are you another judge? Cool. You don't work here? You from the community? Community college? No? I'm Landon. Cool. So when do I start? Are you gonna ask me some questions? Okay. Go ahead, ask me a question. A background? Yeah, I got some background. It's behind me. So, I was born in Puyallup, and I went to hunt, and then I went to Pope, I went back to hunt, and back to Pope, and I went to Ferrucci, and then Glacier View. Now I'm here. Is that good enough? How about we go to the next question? You want to know my research paper? I didn't write it. Some people call it the JRP, I call it the SRP. Next year might be the SSRP for Super Senior Research Paper. You want some best works? Oh yeah, let me get out my portfolio. Through my backpack. I was supposed to drop it off early? Why would I do that? If we're not gonna start till noon, I'll just bring my portfolio at noon. Because it said to drop it off early? That doesn't apply to me. Here's my portfolio. I just finished it yesterday. So I'm gonna go ahead and talk about some assignments and things that I've done in my portfolio. Now, I'm just gonna tell you ahead of time, it hasn't been passed yet. I don't know if that's a big deal, but I'm gonna keep going. This is fun. This is really cool. So is this. This is cool too. What's this? I don't even know what this is. Wait a minute. Did I do this? Huh. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed my speech. I'll see you tomorrow. Good morning, everyone. Can someone raise their hand and tell me some things that perhaps I didn't do too well in the first 5 minutes of my speech? Yes, go ahead.
The whole entire thing.
The whole entire thing. Perceptive, I like it. What else perhaps was not all that great about my speech? When did I show up? Late. Am I dressed properly? No. Was my portfolio here on time? Did I stand to greet the judges? Did I do everything exactly wrong? Did I do all the things that I have seen people do in the last 11 years of doing this? Yes. Everything you saw was something that I have seen. I've seen sweatshirts. I've seen hats, mostly for the practice. I've seen people walk in late. I've seen people without a portfolio. All the things that you need to make sure that you take care of. So, would you do me a favor? Hopefully, as you walked in, did you all get a packet? So, if you don't have a packet, we'll see if we can find some extras for you, and we'll try and get some to you. But while I do some adjusting of the PowerPoint ready, what I'd like you to do is this. Would you please make sure you've got your packet out, and then something to write with. Today is not just a presentation, it is a work day. Ready, set, go. You got 1 minute. Get that stuff out. Next step to graduation presentation. How many of you realize that you are on a very short schedule? Today is March 5th. 2 weeks from today, what needs to be done? Portfolio. I was so shocked, I put the wrong date up there. How many days away are you from doing your practice speech? Yeah, like 30, right? About less than a month, all right? And guess what? Your senior boards are coming quickly. So here's the deal. Today, if you are smart, if you want to save some of your own time, the time where you're not at school, you're at home, then you will listen. You will begin to plan in your head. You'll begin to write down and take notes about what your exit interview will consist of. Here's what I must tell you. This is a big group. What is the reason why this group is so large? Because this interview is... Yes. Raise your hand if you heard that the interview was easy, which is part of the reason why you're here. Here's what I can tell you. I'd be willing to bet, and I don't have official stats, I would say this, that the interview, over the last 10 years plus of doing these, I probably fail in the practice speeches 80% of all first-time interviews. And I'm not a tough grader. I probably, if I fail 80% of the interviews, I bet you I pass 80% of the first-time presentations. Here is why. The number one thing you need to realize today is this. You need to prepare your interview in the same way you would prepare your presentation. People show up and they say, hey, there's 5 questions, I can answer those, no problem. And if you haven't planned, if you haven't thought ahead of time what you're going to say, then guess what? It becomes incredibly obvious that you were unprepared. Here's what really happens. It's not about the judges. It's about you. I'd say of the 80% who don't pass, I bet you a third of those, a third of the 80%, about 25, 26% of those students get about a question and a half in, and then they here's the key word, they right? Which means on their own, they fail themselves. They go through and say, I am not prepared, can I come back tomorrow? Now, remember the 80% that I did pass? I bet you the 20% who I don't pass, about 15% of those 20% don't even do it on the day that they are supposed to go because they haven't prepared. It's just an interview. It's easy. How many of you have been part of a job interview before? Raise your hand. How many of you have been a part of perhaps an interview for a scholarship or a college entrance exam, or you're going to Bates, or you want to get an apprenticeship? Here's what I can tell you. If you've been in an interview, you probably would all agree that guess what? It sounds easy. I'm going to go answer questions and get this job. But what we all know is that what? As soon as you get in there, things change. Nerves show up, okay? If you haven't been prepared, those things, any doubt you had becomes magnified by about 15. And before you know it, you realize that you are not prepared to give this speech. So let's go through a few things. Number one, as you know, is obviously we are going through the Culminating Project exit interview. So here we go. Here is today's purpose, and the purpose of what you'll do for the practice speech, which starts on, I think it's April 11th. Is that right? Okay, pretty soon, about 30 days. As well as senior boards. Here is your overall job. Interview responses clearly address the 5 fundamental questions while including portfolio evidence. That sounds so easy. Do you have the 5 questions? They're in front of you, right? You've got all of them. They're in a packet that looks just like this. You'll be able to see what those are. All right? Now, a few things about this. So it's all about the interview questions and using your portfolio. Before you do your practice speech, you need to have a completed portfolio. For a lot of you who are waiting around, you know who you are. It doesn't go away. I have never heard a student say this. You know what, Millbrook? I just waited and waited and waited, and then eventually in the end, what would have taken me 7 hours only took me 2. Doesn't work that way. Usually it's this. I waited, and I waited, and I waited. What should have taken me 7 hours took me 4 times as long. Because all of a sudden I wasn't working with the evaluator. I had to track down Mr. Harris to be my evaluator. I had to track down someone else to sign off on a sheet that I should have done 3 weeks ago, which is now not due. What do you mean? I have to have my community service plan done ahead of time? Yes. Do those things now. All right. So, a couple things about the interview. Here's some things that I did not do well in my first example. Number one is this. Make sure you arrive early to drop off your portfolio. I believe that time is noon. Put that in your head, where your portfolio needs to be in the classroom by noon. You can expect usually to start your interview with you and the 4 or 5 or 6 other people. The 4 or 5 or 6 other people, usually from your advisory. Usually they'll start between 12:20 and 12:30. You will be there the entire time. Show up early, a couple things. No cell phones, no gum. Dress professional or professional casual. We'll talk about that in a minute. Would this work? Would my last outfit work? No. All right. Address all panel members. Wait to be directed to sit. Sit comfortably with your feet flat on the floor or crossed at the ankle. People say, you're going to tell us how to sit in a chair? Yes. Because believe it or not, the community members, a majority of the time, that they say things like, well, we don't think this person should pass, it's rarely because of content. It's rarely because of a signature you didn't get. It's rarely because of a best works as a spelling error. It's almost always because they'll say something like this. They just didn't present themselves well. These are little things. Take care of them, sit up straight, feet flat on the floor, give a nice handshake, say your name loudly, say, hey, it's nice to meet you. All those things go a long, long way. So, a couple things about dress for success. Number one is be neat and be clean. Pretty easy. You should know this. Hopefully your apparel fits. That goes 2 directions, okay? Not just too baggy, but also, gentlemen, too tight, right? So, don't let your clothing speak more loudly than what you have to say. It's best to stick with basic colors. What do you mean? Here's some things. Short skirts, t-shirts, long, brightly colored fingernails. Sometimes excessive accessories. Okay, too many piercings, too many, the earrings are too long, or there's too much going on. Sometimes, believe it or not, those things can be a distractor. Heavy makeup, perfume, and cologne, all not good. Couple other things. Stay away from this. Bright pattern clothes. Things that say things on them would probably not be a good idea at this point in time. Fishnets. I know, hey, listen. They tell me I have to say these things. I don't even know what a mule is. Can someone tell me what that is?
What?
I don't know. It's a shoe. I'm assuming it's a shoe that's like a slip-on of some sort. Is that right? Is that right? All right. So some things, obviously shoes. Stay away from tennis shoes. Stay away from open-toed shoes. And it's kind of that's one's different now a little bit. Stay away from sandals, and absolutely no flip-flops should be worn. So people say, what does this look like? Oh my gosh, look at that. There are a bunch of people who you probably should, but don't want to dress like. Let's take a vote. Who says that skirt is way too short? Raise your hand if you said that. That's what I thought. Is that Grant? Grant, did you say that?
Yes, it was.
Is that you, Grant? Dude, my 6-year-old adores you, man. You gotta keep up with that stuff? Don't make him tell him now. You gotta go and tell him it's gonna break his heart. So, you'll see some options up there. You got skirts, you got some dress. Obviously, I think it's a matching long skirt and a jacket. I'm not gonna lie, this probably needs to be updated a little bit. I think the third one from the right is in the Navy, I'm not sure. Here's the guys. That's pretty standard. You'll see ties. I don't know if you knew, but I'm pretty sure that guy over there, that's Mr. Wilson, our librarian in 1992. But you get the picture. All right, here's what we're gonna do. If you need some clothes, and a lot of times this is the guys, we have some options for you. Ask someone, ask your advisor, or tell them. Main office. Okay, does anyone know, hey, this is not to joke around with. Because people have come through my classroom with these ugly ties on. Here's one with, that's not okay, it's Santa Claus. Look at that. What's on here? Kind of a jungle theme. Any takers? Grant? I might make you wear this for that comment. Need a tie, Grant? Anyone out there need a tie at all? All right, come on up, Colby. This one's yours. Oh, you want me to leave right here? You can come get it in a minute if you want. The only rule I'm about to say is you have to wear it the rest of the day. You got to put it on your neck and wear it. And I've got you 6 periods, so I'll be able to check. There you go. Anyone else? Where's Landy? You're a good sport. Need this one? You sure? All right. So if you need, all right, if you need clothes, tell someone. Okay, we will help you. All right, here we go. So let's talk about your portfolio. This is a big one. Students have failed for lack of using their portfolio in the interview. You need to use this as a visual aid. You should be opening it up. You should be displaying it. If you want to see what that looks like, watch this. So if someone asks a question and it's about, let's say, your best works, it is highly appropriate that you would go through and have a plan for how you're going to use your portfolio. If there's one thing that might help you more than anything today, listen to this. Question 3. Where's it 4? Best works. Question 4. Is that right? Question 4. Best works. Here's what I would do if I were you. And you don't need to go to it, we'll have a chance to work on this. What I would do is this, is that I would make sure that you have a very specific plan about how you're going to use your portfolio. The question is always this, can I use some note cards? You could, but I would also tell you that you could also use your portfolio in many ways as your note card crutch. Here's what that means. That if you're going to use, let's say in question 4 is the best example. If you knew that you were going to talk about 4 best works, and you also knew that you were going to have an extra 1 or 2 prepared in case you were running short on time, then I would make sure that you have all of those, whether it's on a divider or on a Post-it or on something which goes through that says best works number 1, and it's labeled. You reach in, you grab the tab, it's all of a sudden it's already where it's supposed to be. Oh, here's my first best works. You know what the good news is up in the corner, guys, you guys up there, I just got word that you won't have to worry about doing the speech or anything, so you're okay, keep talking. We're gonna let you guys not do it. All right, some of you know my sense of humor. So then you would begin to go and talk about, hey, here is my first evidence of learning. And you would go through and simply show them what it is as you talk about it. Then you'd have the next tab. Well, here's another tab. You'll see them right here. Here is best works. You don't have a microphone, it'll be easier. Here is best works number 2. You open it up and you talk about it. Okay, this is, you need to have a plan for your portfolio. Okay, and it will help you do the speech and meet the time. That's a big one. And when we go through each question in a couple minutes, and I give you a chance to write, you will see just how many ways you can actually go through and use your portfolio. So it needs to be the central focus of the interview, which is why it needs to be passed before you do it. Here's the next one. So let's talk about what the breakdown is. People always concern themselves, well, how do I know how much time to put on each? And I don't know if this is in your packet or not, but I would probably go about 2 minutes per question. About 2 minutes per question. So you've got your introduction, usually pretty quick, usually short and sweet. Then you move on, and after that you have to go through and begin to say, hey, I've got question 1, background, question 2, community service, question 3, research paper, question 4, evidence of learning, question 5, your transcript and post-high plan. If you plan to have 2 minutes for each of those, then guess what? You will then have 10 minutes. You will meet that 10 to 12 minute mark. So if you are concerned, how do I go through and plan on talking for 10 to 12 minutes? I would tell you this, it's not 10 to 12 minutes. It's 2 minutes 5 times, right? So if you need to break it down that way, please do so. So you have to have 10 to 12 minutes, plus there's going to be some follow-up questions. So here are what you need to be prepared for. They'll say, well, when are you going... Sorry, can we go back? Is that better? And by the way, these times, these will be flexible according to what your skill set is. Some of you might find it real easy to talk about your background, and that goes for 3 minutes. Some of you might find it real difficult to talk about your research paper because, you know what, it just wasn't something that you really remember. It's a year ago. So you can adjust these times, but know that you're trying to aim for about 2 minutes for each. All right, you ready to move on now? I'll bring this back up at the end so we have time. All right, so remember, do I need to answer questions? Yes, many of them. Obviously, the 5 fundamental questions. Those are the ones that are on each section of your packet. You have to answer those 5 questions. Also, in the interview, be prepared. They will, at least once or twice, out of those 5 questions, probably ask you a follow-up question after you answer it. And then you can almost guarantee that they will ask you questions at the end. So you will get, in many ways, perhaps a barrage of questions throughout the 10, maybe even close to 15 minutes that you're up front. 10 to 12 minutes for your speech, another 3, sometimes more, for the actual follow-up questions. Be prepared for that. And you are scored on that. If you can't answer the follow-up questions, they might mark you down, you might not pass your speech. So here's another question. Why do we have to do this? There's all kinds of myths. Hey, where did this secret project thing come from? Why do we have it? There's a myth a few years ago that when the school opened up, Mr. Lowney was a principal intern here, and the other administrators in the building, they got down and said, hey, how can we make the end of the senior year painful? Let's figure out a way to make it miserable for students as they try and graduate. It's not enough to do college applications and college essays and pay for cap and gown and senior photos, which costs $7,000. Let's add a little more onto it. So they created the senior project. Now, how about this? Is that what it feels like to all of you? Yeah. Let me tell you the reality. Probably my third year doing this, I had a student in class. And didn't really do much. Nice kid. Cut him from the basketball team. I mean, the head coach cut him twice. He comes in, he does his interview, and he shows up. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. And the first thing he begins to do is unbutton his shirt. And I thought, this is not going to go well. And he undid the top, probably 2 buttons. And this is why it's important. Because he then undid the top 2 buttons, pulled his shirt back to reveal a scar. Not any scar, a scar that was big, a scar that you could tell was not just from his heart being opened up one time, but 6, 7, 8, 9 times this kid had open heart surgery. And as a kid who sat in class, and we always think, well, I have it tough because I asked someone to prom and they said no. I wanted to get a C+, but I got a C on my AP psychology test. And I think about these things, and I think about this young man who showed up and said, hey, here's what makes me who I am. He proceeded to tell a story about how he was one of about 1 out of, I think it was like 10 to, I think about 1 out of 10 million people had this condition worldwide. And he was born with only 2 of the 4 valves that he needed. And he went through and began to talk about what that meant and about who he was. And when we got done, I thought to myself, man, I wish that I would have known how incredible this young man was when he showed up here versus 2 weeks before he left. But here's what we'll do, we'll take it. Because there's never been a time where students have walked out, and some are better than others, walked out of an interview or a presentation, that there hasn't been either 1 or 2 or the entire group of people, students and staff in the interview or in the presentation, who have said to when they all go outside to score them, we all look at ourselves and go, wow, we are doing the right thing by letting students have the chance to go out and say who they are, how school, how their background, how the work they've done has impacted their future. That's why you're doing it. That's why you're doing it. Okay? And we want to know those things. Sound good? So questions do you have so far? What do you have questions about? Before we get to the actual 5 things you need to know. So, if those questions, here's what I'll tell you. Guess what? The first 30 seconds when that kid unbuttoned his shirt and showed us the scar, talked about the 8 or 10 heart surgeries that he has had, many of those before the age of about 4 or 5, at least 1 when he's in high school and 1 in junior high. That was a pretty darn good introduction. I would encourage you that although you will not start until many times until after you get the first question from the head judge for the most part, I would prepare something like that. Something which grabs us, something which lets us know a little bit about who you are and your purpose for being in the interview in that day. So there's a couple things. I'll get out of the way. Number 1, that first impression is huge. Plan for it. Okay, if the first thing out of your mouth is, okay, yeah, so, who's heard that before? Yeah, wait till you see some of your advisory people, or maybe you, when they do their practice speech. Just tell us about your background and a little about how it's influenced who you are as a person today. Yeah, so like, sometimes, okay, I'll start. Well, we wanted you to start 10 seconds ago, all right? Be prepared. Have the first part of your answer figured out and done. Eye contact, make sure you know the judge's names. If you want to refer to them by name, that would be a good thing. Sit only after you've been introduced or met the judges. And a lot of times the first question will be done by the head judge, and that's when you'll start your first answer. Here's question 1. Tell us a little about yourself. How has your background influenced your development as a person? In your packet, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes. In your packet, here's what I need you to do. I need you to begin to answer that question. We're not going to talk. Here's what I can tell you. If you are someone who is looking around right now and saying, I don't want to work right now, then great. Have fun doing this at home on your own time. That'll be great. But I'm not going to allow you to sit and talk to your neighbors because I want them to have a chance to spend the next 3 or 4 minutes brainstorming. What might I say? So the next 3 minutes, here's what you're going to do. You're going to consider these things. That how do I go through and create a 1 or 2 minute introduction and answer the question about what my background is and how it's influenced me as a person today. Some things you might look at. Sorry. Some things you might look at. If you've written a personal essay, there might be some things in that you could refer to. Your letter of introduction. Most of you probably have started to write that. That would be good to refer to the things you put in that essay. Also, your resume and references, here's what I would tell you. For the most part, this would be a question that if you know that your answers on the research paper or best works might be limited, increase the time you spend on the introduction. You've got 3 minutes. Wake up someone next to you. No talking. We'll try and maybe get some tunes going if that's possible. Yeah? Any music up there? Something light? Easy on the ears? Taylor Swift. I don't ever want to hear her sing a song again.
Thank you.
So we'll go about 3 or 4 minutes, maybe about a song length. Here's all your job. Just take the time right now. Go through and try and brainstorm how you might answer this. I'll be walking around. If you're talking, I'll just put the mic in front of your mouth. You can keep on saying what you're saying. Let's see how that goes. In the interest of time, we're going to move on. So have your attention. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, as I talk about question 2, if for some reason someone around you said something that they're going to talk about and it reminds you of something you could probably talk about, it's okay to steal their idea and say, oh yeah, that'd be a great idea. I might add that to my question number 1. Now, if they have a job at McDonald's and you don't, then don't add that, all right? All right, here we go. Question number 2. And how about this? Did it go okay? What were some of the things that you said you would talk about in question 1? You want to offer up some examples? What? Sports, good one. Go ahead, John. What's that? There you go. You got one, Demetrius? About your background? Just one thing you could something you can talk about. Switching schools, good one. What else? Go ahead. Friendships, family, that's a big one. Anyone else? Go ahead. Struggles, absolutely. Anyone else? Go ahead. Derek. Can't hear you. All right. Here we go. Question number 2. So you can hear me clap once, clap twice, 3 times. Here we go. So question 2 is this. You kind of refocus here so you get some time to get some things done. Number 2 is this. Tell us about your community experience project. What were the goals and objectives established by your mentor and you, usually? What did you want to get out of it? And what did you learn about yourself and the community? That's a big question. It's okay to go through and divide that up. It's okay if your community experience perhaps wasn't as great as you wanted it to be. Tell us the story. You know what? I wanted to go and watch a psychiatrist because psychiatry interests me. And I had these goals about perhaps listening to patients And I set up the 20 hours, and I met with the psychiatrist, and we had all these things. I was really excited because it's what I want to do in my future, and I got there, and I realized that I wasn't going to be someone who was actually going to be helping at all as I did my community service. It just meant that I filed papers and worked as an office staff person in a psychiatry office. That is a very real example of something that might happen. Now, we would love to say, oh yeah, this is the best thing ever, but sometimes reality happens. And so we want to know the reality about what your community experience was. If it was incredible, tell us why it was incredible. If it wasn't, it's okay, tell us perhaps the things that you would have liked to change about your community experience project. Your 20 hours, what your goals were, what you did, all right, all of that stuff. Here are some things that you might want to make sure you look at when you answer the question. We'll get to it. How about this? I'll talk about it. You have 3 minutes. We'll hope for a good song. Please go through and write down some things you might. And by the way, all the brainstorming you do now is all time you can save yourself later by taking care of it now. Get the thought process going. Because less than a month, you'll be probably doing your speech. A little over a month. So if you're wondering how to answer question 2, here's some things you might add. Make sure that you can conclude. Number 1 is your community service plan and hours. Number 2, you can talk about your mentor evaluation, what they said about. Question number 3, it's almost work time. And we'll get to it. There we go. If you are looking at question number 3, here it is tell us about your research-based paper. The question includes 2 components. Usually people forget about the second one. Here's what I can tell you. A majority of your research papers are about a controversial issue. It is okay to go through and tell us about the issue. Especially if you can go through and tell us about both sides of the issue. Things like gun control. Things like whatever topic you may be writing. So the media's influence on whatever. Okay, please tell us about 2 things. A, what your paper is. Here's the part people always forget. And I probably asked this question as a follow-up as a judge, probably at least over 50% of the time. Is can you please tell me about the research process? The research process, meaning, tell us about where you got your stuff. What was difficult about going to the library or using the internet? The Google, if you use the Google, tell us whether that worked out for you, where you found your stuff. Tell us about the writing. If the writing was difficult, tell us why, all right? So, a couple other questions. Why select the topic, what you learned, and what was most difficult about the research and writing process. You've got 3 minutes, go. The last 2, all right, I'm not going to give you work time, but you probably understand kind of what you need to do between now and the time where you begin to answer these questions. Here is question 4. Okay, so I won't give you work time, but question 4 is all about your best works. I would tell you you should plan on having at least 3 best works as part of your presentation. If you are smart, and I would tell you all to do this. Question 4. When you go and you have your interview, it is timed. And they will usually show you an 8 at the 8-minute mark. And then a 9, obviously, at the 9-minute mark. There's always someone, right? So, here's what you're going to do. Is that you, Josties? No. Yes. What I would say is this, is that you, thank you. Someone went and got me one already, but this doesn't make you less of a man. Or the man. The man. It's on there. Yeah. All right. So, what I would tell you is that if you have best works, the absolute best way to ensure that you meet the time, here's a nugget. It's really, really good. Make sure that you are doing. It's like a gold nugget. It's worth a lot of money. What I would tell you is that you should plan on continuing to answer question 4 until one of the judges flashes the 9 at you and says you are at 9 minutes. At that point in time, you wrap up that one maybe the next 10, 15 seconds. Then all you have to do is worry about the last question, which is going to be question number 5, obviously, which is about what your future plans are. Some people, this could be a 5-minute speech about how excited you are about the future. A lot of you are like, my future plans are to graduate in 3 weeks. It's as far as I've gotten. Okay. If that's the case for you, you might want to go to about 9.5 minutes, 9 minutes and 55 seconds, whatever. So make sure that you plan. Go and do your best worst, question 4, up until at least the 9-minute mark. Here's what that means. If you are asking question 4 and you only plan to answer 3 of them, we will all know when you realize that you've answered all 3 best works and you are at the 7-minute mark and there's no way you can talk about question 5 for 3.5 minutes. What do you do? I will tell you what you do. You make sure that you plan to have at least 2 or 3 extra best works. And you might say, no, Brooke, I'm not going to do that. That means I got to go through and think about 2 or 3 more best works that I don't plan on talking about. If you don't plan it, it becomes real obvious to all of us whether or not you actually planned on going and getting it. And what I've done in the past is I have stopped the clock as students spend 30 seconds trying to go through and just find something to talk about. That doesn't count as question answering time. So plan ahead. At least get 4 or 5 different best works that you can use. Now, question 5. This will be one for a lot of you that I know that if you wanted to expand upon this, you can do so. It's not that difficult. If you're going to a college, tell us why that college. If you're going to a 2-year vocational school you're going to Bates or you're going to an art institute, tell us why you chose that and then what you're going to do. So when someone goes, I'm going to Bates because I'm going to be involved in their computer science program, that's nice and short and sweet. You can expand on that. I know you can. Because if you've made a decision about what you want to do about post-high school, I'm assuming that more has gone into it than saying, I'm going to go to Bates. Done. End of story. You probably have thought about what kind of programs Bates have. You've thought about what kind of a job you perhaps might want to do after you get done. So list some of those things. Talk about those sort of things. It's okay to go through and talk about your future. Here is the question. I always ask students this. It's called the $1 million question. And all that means is this. If time and money and insecurities were all not a concern, where would you go and what would you do? And somebody might say, well, nothing. I would just travel around and hang out. Okay? But here's what I'm telling you is, what would you do if all of those worries, all those concerns weren't of concern to you? You could go and do it. And I would tell you that you should live life that way. Go and say, hey, ultimately, here's what I want to get. Not what people think I can do. Not what my mom says I should do, or my dad says I should do, or not what my older sisters went and did, so if I have to follow them. What do you want to do? And we want to know those things. So 2 things about the question. A, what you want to do, and then you know what the best part is? If you can wrap it all up in a conclusion, which talks about how Emerald Ridge High School or the Puyallup School District has prepared you to go and take those next steps, we are going to be all excited. We're going to pass you. We're going to do all kinds of celebrating. all right? Because you will then have done a nice job. All right, a few more things. Questions about any of the questions? Questions about questions. Anyone? Here we go. Always a big concern. What should I expect after I'm done with the 5 questions? You should expect, obviously, to have a short conclusion, something that you plan. Do not end your question, interview answers like this. And so yeah, I guess that's about it. At the end, whenever you know you're getting close to done, just have a pre-prepared sentence or two, like this one. And then I plan after college, eventually getting married and having 17 children, and getting a reality TV show. Great. Now, thank you for your time.
Keep dreaming.
And this opportunity to share with you the highlights of my high school experience. Do you have any further questions? Then they'll probably ask you a couple of further questions, and that's okay. You'll be prepared, you'll answer those questions, all right? They'll say, well, really, why do you want to have such a large family? You might say, because, you know what? I grew up with 9 other siblings, and it seems like a large family, but I love it. And you know what? I want to have a large family. It's always been a dream of mine. That would be a very legit answer that you go through and expand upon. So make sure you answer the questions. When they are done, just say, hey, and again, thank you for your time. All right. So let me go through about 5 more things. I know that I'm losing you. I know that this is about the time where it becomes difficult. But I'm going to ask you to hang in here for a few more important reminders. It's a lot easier to know this and prepare for it ahead of time so you don't have to go through and get this information after you've already practiced your speech one time. So here's a couple things. Number 1, you are graded on your organization. Do you have the ability to go through and effectively greet and express gratitude? Are these central ideas, which means each of the 5 core questions answered completely? If you do that, and you do it in a sufficient way that is clearly organized, you will pass. Ideas and evidence. All of your main ideas. That's great. But the question is have you gone through and added in evidence? Evidence such as when you go through and talk about your research paper, can you tell us about what it was? Can you show us the paper? Can you tell us about what it was like to get certain sources? If you go through and talk about your best works, show us your best works. Not 5 math assignments. Show us why you would choose this as a best work, why you're proud of it. So that's all about the evidence. A couple other things. These are pretty normal. These are expected of you. You should probably practice your interview before you do it. It doesn't mean you have to sit down, with a parent. You can practice in front of the mirror. You would be surprised because you are probably your own worst critic. You'd be surprised how efficient it is to do something in front of a mirror, watch yourself, and then adjust accordingly to make sure it looks good. Do that. Use of voice. Can we hear you? That's a big one. Are you talking slowly? Yes. I can also tell you this, that proper grammar for a lot of people is a big deal. It's an interview. It's an exit interview. Make sure you talk using proper grammar. A couple other things. Quality of responses, fluency and confidence. Are your answers thoughtful? Is there something about your questions which make them your own? Or is this just an answer we've heard from other students over the last 10 to 12 years? If you get asked a follow-up question, make sure you answer that in a way that is obviously coherent, meaning you have thought about the answer. I would tell you this, don't be petrified of getting a question. If you get stuck, when you get the question, re-say it out loud to buy yourself some time to think about it, and then go and answer the question. Here's some hints. Relax. Guess what? We want to pass you. We want to. We want you to do well. We want you to prepare for it, but then we also want you to do well. Number 2 is this. Know your weaknesses. If you know them ahead of time, guess what? Figure out what they are and practice them and improve them. And then last one is practice, baby, practice. Here are some things that I don't know if they're on the packet or not. Might be on the front, but you might want to check out. Number 1 is this. That date, March 26th, is wrong. Don't look at it. March 19th. March 19th. I looked at last year's calendar, and it was the 26th last year. March 19th. Not the 26th, March 19th. That is close. That's 2 weeks from today. Some other dates. Your mandatory practice days. Guess what? Those are about 20 school days away. 20 school days. That's 10 hours in advisory. That's not much. You'll be doing, and a lot of you probably have you gotten your practice speech evaluators yet? Probably people in your family, your advisory family. Make sure you check out by the office who's your actual evaluator. And then senior boards, there's a day, May 2nd and the 3rd, which is 34 school days away.